Welcome back to 7 Seconds or More. This is episode 29. We'll get into, we actually did some research. We actually looked up the player. Where's number 29? Not trying to guess. We'll get into that in a second. But for now, I am your host, Peter Howarth, and I'm joined as usual by Duncan Adele. Duncan, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a good sports atmosphere here in France with the World Cup and everything like that. I think Morocco, France, if either team wins, it'll be chaos outside. A lot of Moroccans here in France, but excited for that, and also excited to talk about some basketball.
Well, I guess it's a win-win or a lose-lose, depending on how you view it. But either way, chaos in the streets.
For sure, for sure. Kind of, it's like Philly-esque, like Super Bowl in Philadelphia, but wish we could have that more often.
Well, the other side of the bracket, I think it's a win-win as well. Argentina, Croatia. If Argentina wins, you get to see one of the greats, Messi. I think
Yeah.
it'd be his first World Cup final, if I'm not incorrect.
Um, no, he lost against Germany in 2014, but he's
Um,
still searching for a dub, so it'd be
for the
another chance for
title.
him to get one before he retires.
And then for Croatia, it would be a back-to-back finals appearance, and Luka Modric, maybe his last World Cup as well. One of the
Yeah,
best midfielders of all time. My favorite player to watch.
nice. And big
Uh,
dogs both times.
yes, they improbably through the PKs, they just keep. You gotta beat him in regulation time. The book is out. Number 29 was the number of Paul Silas, who I believe unfortunately passed away either this morning or last night. The news came this morning. A longtime Celtic great, 5 all defensive teams, 2-time All Star, 3-time NBA champion. So, not off to a strong start in these numbers. But again, number 29, not a number a lot of players wear. So, wanted to give him his props.
Rest in peace.
So, before we get started with our main topic of the day, we will get going with a full court press. As always, 3 topics, rattle through quick. I go, then Duncan goes because I wrote the questions. So, for our first question, I was inspired by the Mismatch podcast. So, that's Kevin O'Connor and Chris Vernon. Shout out to them, borrowing this idea from them. Number one, granted, we've played barely over a quarter of the season, but the Chicago Bulls are 12th in the East at 10 and 14, and with Nikola Vucevic's contract up after this year and DeMar DeRozan's up after next, should they look into the possibility of blowing it up? Again, I think it's one. I don't know if it's as black and white as maybe the question writes itself to be. They should look into it. But at the same time, I think the way the Chicago Bulls should be as a franchise is they should be a franchise that never rebuilds. They should be like the Indiana Pacers, in which they are always in contention and they are always trying to be competitive. So I think trading Vucevic and DeRozan would sort of signal them trying to not be in contention. And I don't think that would work for the fans of Chicago. And I don't think you can lose them. So, uh, due to the way the team has been playing and sort of the pessimism around maybe when Lonzo Ball will return, I don't know if they should trade Vucevic and DeRozan, but I don't think it's off the table.
I just lost connection for like 2 minutes there, so I will take what you said and believe you. But there was a topic
Should the Bulls
trading.
look into trading DeRozan Vucevic?
Gotcha, gotcha. I think that I think they should wait it out. You still have drafts, you still have time, you still have maybe Lonzo coming back at some point. You've got the talent on your team. There's more things you can change to try to get some success. And with the East being maybe not as deep as it was last year, with more perhaps bottom feeders trying to tank for Victor Wembanyama, um, I think there's still time on that table. Also, don't know exactly what they would get for them, and would it be something that would help you now, or you're not really in rebuild mode. So I think like trying to continue to build around them and get what you got going would be a better course of action.
Yeah, again, I just don't think the fans of Chicago would be up for another like rebuild. They picked high when they picked Wendell Carter Jr. and Kobe White and Patrick Williams, and those didn't work out for them. So I guess they should wait it out for now. Number two, after the Celtics' dominant road win over the Phoenix Suns, Jaylen Brown said that him and Jason Tatum are the best two-way players in the league. But are they the best duo in the league? It's hard to dispute. Although based off last night's dominant win for Golden State, I think Steph and Clay would still like a seat at the table. I think Giannis and Chris Middleton would still like a seat at the table. And look at the way those guys out in LA have been playing in terms of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, the only other one that stands out to me that would make a lot of sense would be Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but they cannot stay on the floor. So part of what makes Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum such a great duo is that they're both wings that are great at playing on both ends of the court as being two-way players, and they're also incredibly durable. That cannot be said for a lot of these other pairs of players in the league. So I do think they are the best two-way players in the league this season. I think they have been the best duo in the league, but everything's very close. There's just so much talent, and it can fluctuate and change so easily.
Yeah, I will say that I think that they're the best two-way duo, a duo that is two-way in the
Correct.
league. They
I
might be
agree.
like the only of their kind. Although you can almost say that for LeBron and AD. They're pretty two-way, I guess, as far as that goes. But the other thing is like it's not one or the other. So how often have both of them like lit up for 25 plus points this season? Um, yeah, I think that's what's most impressive about that duo is it's true. It's less of like I lean on you, you lean on me. Like for the Warriors, like Clay had that huge slump, which kind of exposed him a little bit. I don't think he can be part of the best duos because he's not even in the top like 25 players in the NBA this season right now. Just throwing out a number that might not be like accurate, but
Yeah,
he's not
yeah.
having a great start to the season. So how can he be part of the best duo? So right now, I would tend to agree and say that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the best duo in the NBA.
Clay, he was good last night. He was looking like some vintage Clay. Although the Celtics, they looked like dazed and confused, and
Yeah, I
they,
mean, I think Jaylen Brown he said it right. He said we like circled this matchup on the calendar. Like we didn't play our game, we played to the matchup and the story, and that's what maybe that's what did them in the finals last year, and it didn't help last night because they kind of looked like. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't catch the whole game, but it was reminiscent of that finals.
it was extremely. It was. I was getting the flashbacks for sure.
Rip.
Well, again, it's as I guess people have been quick to jump on the Warriors and their sort of lack of success early on. We mentioned it before we started the show. The Warriors, while they're a 500 team, they're like 12-2 at home, and the reason they're 500 is because they had that historic awful road start to the season. I think they're 2-11 on the road. So it's a
Yeah.
team you don't want to play at home. They're too smart. They're going to figure out a win. They're the Warriors. Like don't like let's not write them off. And I don't think we should write off someone as talented as Clay, as much as he's gone through his multiple knee surgeries.
Yeah, no, 100%. But it is a little embarrassing when, the Warriors, the only road win they've been able to salvage was against the Rockets, and then they come into your house when you're the top team in the league and you get a little embarrassed. Like it was not about basketball, it was about the finals, I think, and it kind of showed in that game.
It was, and once again, they could not have an answer for Steph Curry. They looked like they were carrying more on rebounds and transition opportunities. The Celtics can play the excuse we didn't have Rob Williams and Al Horford. Well, the Warriors didn't have Andrew Wiggins, who might have been the best player in the finals outside of Steph Curry. So
Yeah.
uh, I was as promising as the start of the season has been for the Celtics. All it takes is one game like that, and you're humbled. So a lot of season left for both teams for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited for the January 20th matchup. They play again in at the Warriors, and it'll
That
be
one's in
cool to see if
Boston.
anything changed. That one's in Boston?
Hmm.
Might be. That one is also in Boston. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they let the kind of the game get to them or if they play their basketball.
The Garden will get loud for that one. I know that for sure. Number three, last question here. This is a bit of a precursor for our main topic for the day. Both of these franchises are thin on future draft picks and a long term plan. Which would you rather be the GM of, the LA Lakers or the Brooklyn Nets? It's tough. I was trying to pick two of the teams where I don't know if there's a clear cut answer. To me, there's a clear cut answer. I would rather be the Lakers because Anthony Davis is still, well, at the moment, he is playing like an MVP talent. Uh, I guess it was remiss, an omission on our part to not include him in our MVP episode, which was last episode, episode 28. But the reason why we didn't include him is because Anthony Davis is an infuriating player to root for due to the injuries he has, and the inconsistencies with the talent. I mean, he still made the NBA 75 list over some other players that maybe have accomplished more than him in his career. It's due to the talent that he possesses and that ceiling, and it's frustrating to not see it out of him. But again, if I'm being the general manager, Anthony Davis might be the best asset, depending on how you view Kevin Durant at the moment, as well as it's the Lakers. You're going to get free agents to sign there, whereas if Kevin and Kyrie are gone, are we going to get free agents to sign with the Nets? I know Kevin and Kyrie obviously they picked to play in Brooklyn, but was that a one time thing, or are the Nets really like a destination like that? Hard to tell. I would defer to the second greatest franchise in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. It's the LeBron like effect of he comes through, requires all this capital, and then 4 years after, like we're in that fourth year of LeBron in LA, I think, all of a sudden everything's dried up. There's no money, there's no picks. He's got a bunch of old players around him, and he leaves. I don't know if he'll leave now. He renewed, right? He's got those 2 extra years.
He did sign the extension, yes.
So that is different than his time in like Cleveland and Miami, I believe. Um, and then there's going to be all the stuff with Bronny coming in soon, and that's going to be a GM nightmare because you're going to have to are you going to have to trade up to get the Bronny pick because you're afraid that some other team will pick him too high to get LeBron to come over? Like, I don't know. I think I'd rather be the GM of the Nets because I believe
Mm.
in Kevin Durant a bit more. Maybe it's more from a personal standpoint than like a basketball standpoint, but like you're under the microscope if you're with the Lakers. If you're with the Nets, like I feel like you have more control of your GM process. Maybe the assets are kind of similar, but I think you're in less scrutiny to succeed right away than the Lakers would be.
It is true. No one really cares about the Nets the same way. But going off your point about Bronny, I remember when that initial Bronny sort of news came out when LeBron said that, he wants to play with Bronny so that he would maybe in theory go wherever he's drafted. The talk was, how high will Bronny go, because a team could draft him and they maybe ultimately it's a package deal. You draft Bronny and then you're going to get LeBron. So how high does that propel and vault him?
I'm thinking of like Presti and the Thunder, like they've got draft picks to spare. Like they could very
They
easily
probably have cap space
rationalize
too.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, they have cap space. The draft picks. They pick him. They get Bronny, looking like a decent prospect right now. Maybe I mean we see all the highlights because he's LeBron's son, so he's always going to look decent. But I feel like it'd be very easy for the media to scrutinize him as well. Maybe he's not getting that much, um, but you get LeBron James Jr., LeBron James, Chet will be back. Whatever else is coming, like that would be a an interesting move. Maybe that's what he's been calculating up in his lab.
It's hard for me to see him playing in Oklahoma City. I mean, he played in Cleveland, but he's from Cleveland. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I think he might get in his head that he wants to play with Bronny, and then he goes full yabba dabba 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 do Old Navy, and then he wants to stay in LA. Who knows?
I knew from the start that if I bluffed and said I'd do that, then they would just actually wind up cutting Bronny, and then we'd be able to pick him up as a free agent.
He said it. He knows it. He's a prophet. That LeBron.
uh, but I wonder if if on like the other end, he would force whatever team he's playing for, like the Lakers, where he has so much say, to trade up to make sure that they get him, and then like that wouldn't help the team like where they are right now. We'll get into the Lakers a bit more later or in a little bit. Like it's just kind of a bit of a dumpster fire in terms of like assets and aging assets and like the future. And yeah, maybe if I, would you have to trade AD away if you want to be like relevant in the next 4 years?
Well, if you're gonna trade for Anthony Davis, the I think the belief was that you have LeBron and AD. You have LeBron for however long, much longer he keeps playing. You have him for the rest of his career, and then AD is the guy. So trading Anthony Davis would be incredibly strange at this point. Now, I believe some of the other rationale where you're talking about LeBron's sort of leverage in LA was that when he signed this extension, that there might have been some sort of wink wink handshake agreement that if I'm gonna resign with this franchise, you need to trade those two future picks we have to make the team better around us. So far they haven't done it, but part of that was
Yeah,
using those picks to shed Westbrook's salary, but now Westbrook has been pretty good for them as a sixth man. I think he is still the odds-on favorite for sixth man of the year. So now what's been floated around recently is doing a smaller trade. So that would be maybe like Patrick Beverly and Kendrick Nunn in a first for like a smaller shooter, like maybe just Buddy Healed, something like that. But
yeah.
yeah, how much does that push the
But they
needle
would
for
be
them?
trading their 2026 first. That is the next first round pick that they own.
Yeah, it's so
I
far
think the
down.
Pelicans could have like I think they have the right to two picks. Maybe it's a choice. I'm not exactly sure, so they could have one before that. But yeah, it's far down.
So let's just take that and transition right into our main topic for the day. So I know sometimes we talk about how annoying it is that some of the big, media heads or some of the big shows are always talking about New York and LA, always talk about the teams. So we've decided to rip the band aid. Instead of just dancing around them every episode, we're just going to cover them all one episode, going to get it done. So we will start with the Lakers, like we mentioned. So, Duncan, would you like to give us a bit of a synopsis of where they're at right now?
Yeah, so it's like I'd say they're a classic Dallas Cowboys fan right now. They're 10-15, 13th in the West, 5-5 over the last 10. I remember there was all those graphics, and I talked about that a bit before. Of they're like 8-2 over 10 games, or like they were 7-3, and they played the Spurs 3 times. And so this is two of those 5 wins are against the Spurs. AD is looking like MVP caliber in these last 10. He was Western Conference Player of the Week. He's been averaging 31 points, almost 14 rebounds, almost 3 blocks. And that is one game. It's including one game where he exited after 8 minutes with like flu like symptoms against the Cavs. Apparently, he had like 100 something fever that day. Kind of weird, kind of classic AD, especially since he looked fine and he was playing fine. He just like jumped for a ball, walked to the bench, walked straight to the tunnel, didn't hear about him again. But yeah, Russ is looking more comfortable off the bench. However, like numbers wise, like we're comparing it to the beginning of the season when he was starting and he was horrible, but his shooting numbers and everything like that, and points and rebounds and assists are still down from last year. They're down from last year, and they didn't make the play in last year. Granted, I think in his role it fits him better with the usage and everything. Pat Bev is like it's funny. His true shooting is oh shoot, I don't have it in here. But he's shooting 30% from the field, 23% from three with like 3.2 attempts per game. So, he's shooting three threes a game and missing them. And like he's supposed to be the energy boost for these old men, but he's joining the geriatric squad.
Yeah,
LeBron is LeBron. Over the last 10, 27, 8.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 49, 41, 67 shooting splits. He's he's LeBron. He's pretty good. But like, what is the ceiling for the Lakers? The West being so deep, and their team being maybe worse than last year. and AD being like one little injury away from missing the season, like, do you think if AD is able to play the rest of the season at this pace, would it elevate them out of purgatory?
Well, there's a couple things there. What you're saying about Russ, I think this is what a lot of people envisioned out of him when they traded for him last year. I mean, I think anyone envisioning him being like a legitimate part of that top of that big three with AD and LeBron, I think that's maybe short sighted. What I
That's fair.
thought would be really great out of Russ, and what I thought what's been part of his greatness for the last couple of years is he is great elevating the players around him. And there's a reason where wherever he goes, they'll limp to 48 wins in the back of the playoffs because he can just do that much for the rest of his team. So I thought him essentially running the second unit, having LeBron taking some playmaking off, having a little more rest, and having him recharge for the rest of the season and eventually the playoffs. Russ being able to handle that bigger playmaking load, working with that bench unit, I thought that'd be a great combination, and it's finally done it. And I don't know if it was Russ not being comfortable in LA, him not buying into that sort of second unit role. But again, he has looked a lot more comfortable, and I think the same
Yeah.
sort of thing goes with Patrick Beverly. I think he was really in his own last year with Minnesota when he was able to work with a younger group of players and be able to sort of mentor them and to be that veteran presence, showing them how it's done. In LA, who's listening to Pat Bev and is just like buying what he's preaching when you have LeBron telling him that, and you have Russ and you have AD, all people you probably listen to above Beverly. I don't think it works on that team. Ironically, it might have worked with the Jazz a little bit better, who he was traded from.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of like high school, like when you're a freshman in high school, like maybe you're on a sports team or something, and like you look up to the seniors, and like one senior is like getting everybody riled up and whatever, and then when you're a senior and you see that other senior getting the freshmen riled up or the younger people riled up, and you're just like, well, what is he doing, or what are they doing? That's kind of like the vibe I get of LA. Like you have the second best player or the top two player in all of NBA history on your team, and you're trying to give him a pep talk, like that's got to be kind of weird sometimes.
And with Beverly, I do agree with what you're saying. Uh, just due to the hyper focus that there is on the Lakers, because it is a Lakers town, always will be. As big of a star name recognition as that team is, from Russ to LeBron to AD, it's still going to be about what are you doing for me now? And as much as a big name and a big get that Patrick Beverly seemed to be for that team, Lakers fans are looking at well, what are you doing for me now? You're shooting 30%, shooting 23.3% from three. You're doing cheap shots, shoving guys in the back still. What are you doing for me now? You're not helping me out. Um,
Yeah,
so again, I do think maybe that smaller Lakers package makes sense. Them trading one of the firsts and maybe getting a role player. But again, I don't know. They're 10 and 15. It's hard for them to foresee. It's hard for them for me to see them winning a first round series. Obviously, they have the high end ceiling with guys like LeBron and AD, but the rest of the roster has to help them out. LeBron's going to miss games. AD's going to miss games. Can the rest of the roster
yeah,
keep afloat that long? I don't know.
yeah. But it's crazy because they could, you know, they could like get just prove everybody wrong, and AD could continue being AD. Like if he plays at this pace all season, and then all of a sudden some of the other players like start to realize like, hey, like I have some breathing room, like I don't have to do everything on this team for us to win. Like that'd be interesting. He's second in win share percentage, right behind the Joker. Joker's at 29.6% and he's at 28.5%. And then afterwards it's like a decent little drop off, and it kind of is like reminiscent of the Denver team. But would you say the surrounding cast around the Joker is better than that around AD?
I think it's more of a team. Aaron Gordon's been a lot. He's been pretty good this year. Their off-season signing of Bruce Brown was good. Trading for Kentavious Caldwell Pope has been a good fit. They still have Bones Highland. Jamal Murray, he had the game winner the other night. He's starting to put it together. Granted,
Yeah, he's picking it up.
it would help them a lot if Michael Porter Jr. could be in the lineup every night. He's out with a heel
Yeah.
injury right now. No timetable for return. Always a scary thing for a guy who is constantly banged up. But again, they're more of a team.
Yeah. So, like, is that their ceiling then for this season?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
it's interesting because the Nuggets, what are they right now? They're they're third, 16-10. Like, I don't know, it's tough.
the Nuggets can conceivably be a team in the Western Conference Finals, and I don't think you bat an eye. I mean, it's funny again, it's still early on, and we keep reiterating that point. But the Western Conference has seemingly, at least the top four, it's plausible. The Pelicans, then Grizzlies, Nuggets, Suns. Grizzlies winning 5 in a row here without Desmond Bain. Pelicans winning 6 in a row. Zion getting healthy. Suns, they've dropped 3 in a row. Chris Paul just returned. Obviously, so that Cameron Johnson and then Jay Crowder still have not resolved that situation, but it shook out a lot of the ways that you would expect. So for the Lakers, they got to get past the Thunder, who Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's playing at an elite MVP level, like we've discussed. Timberwolves, who are still underperforming, but again, still better than the Lakers. You have the Mavericks and Luca.
Yeah.
You have the Jazz, who maybe are overperforming. Warriors, Clippers, Trailblazers, Kings. Say what you want about the Kings and Trailblazers coming into the year. They're 5 and 6 in the West right now, and the Lakers are 13th. There's a lot of
Yeah.
talented teams in the West, and
Yeah.
again,
But it's about winning games, not about talent. And
yep,
they're still having some trouble doing that.
Lakers have been playing better basketball as of late, and there's a lot to be said for that. But he's got to catch up for that other lost time, I guess. And then there's just still, again, we've said it before. There's just so much talent in the league. It's hard to overcome all that talent ahead of you.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if the Lakers do a deadline trade or a trade before the deadline rather. Um, it's hard to envision what would help them because Russ might have some value right now. Do you trade Russ because you don't want to trade draft picks because you're selling your future? I don't know. Would trading Russ make your team better? Like, I don't know, but I think they do have to try to make a trade and just get into the play-in or the playoffs. Um, we'll see what that entails of. There's some buzz about Cam Reddish apparently being available for a second round pick. So, well, who knows what will happen with that?
Yeah, it's hard to. I always find it funny sometimes because the trade deadline it's just like the last day you can trade. You can trade before that, but it seems like everyone waits until that to, I think, get a feel for their team. If I'm trading my first round pick for the Lakers, which have been like guarded and is really like their last poker chip here, I want to trade it sooner than later and get help for my team. And
Yeah.
maybe I trade for a guy in a week, right? Because I think December 15th is the date in which players signed in the offseason are eligible to be traded. Well, let's say
Okay.
I go out and trade for someone, then the fit isn't there. I can still trade him in February.
That is true. That is true. Gives them some flexibility. And I want to say that they have like a tough lineup or tough schedule coming up. But I think every schedule is tough when you're a team that's in like the 10 win range. They're taking on the Pistons, which who knows, and then it's Celtics, Nuggets, Wizards, Suns, Kings, and then the Hornets. So yeah, whatever. Mavs, like I don't know. It's just wherever you see all these matchups, it's a tough matchup every night. There's not a ton of easy games for them.
No, I mean they can't take games off, and again with the talent in the league, I don't. I think there are less like gimme games than there have been in a while. Granted, I still think when you play Charlotte, the Spurs, those are maybe the two most gimme games. Although they're still they still have Greg Popovich. They're not bowing out of any game.
Yeah, yeah, and then Rockets and other teams too. But
Rockets
yeah, it's
maybe
it's
too.
just
Yeah.
like even those teams will win a couple of games every like they'll win a game every other week or something like that. And could those wins come against the Lakers with the way they're playing? Like very well could be.
And again, a lot of that depends on the health of Davis and LeBron, with them out of the lineup, it makes things super hard. And again, it's hard to rely on those guys for really any more than like 65 games a year.
Yeah.
So, and it's a great transition to a team that has a similar sort of top-loaded problem with their stars, at least. But they're sitting a little differently in terms of the standings. That will be their cross-town rivals, the LA Clippers, 15 and 13, seventh in the West, 4 and 6 over their last 10. So they've been below average while they've been an above 500 team, and they've similar, I guess, to the Lakers. They have gotten some of these easy wins against some teams you might expect less of. They've beaten the Wizards and the Hornets. They've beaten the Pacers and the Blazers, who are both, again, teams who have maybe overperformed expectations. Not that I think they will necessarily regress, because there's been promising results. But again, um,
Yeah.
teams have been fighting above their grade. And then in terms of teams they've lost to the Heat, the Magic, Kings, Jazz, Nuggets, Warriors, and they have a tough slate here next 3 games, but they're all at home and all on national TV. They play Celtics,
Wow.
and then they play a back-to-back Minnesota Phoenix. So 3 very tough games. But here's the thing with the Clippers, right? 28th in the league in offensive rating, only higher than San Antonio and Charlotte, because
Oof.
their calling card is on the defensive end, 5th in defensive rating, behind the Cavaliers, Bucks, Pelicans, and Sixers, and that puts them 21st in defensive rating. And if you want to try to figure out like the range they're in, they're behind again Portland, Indiana, and Atlanta, and they're ahead of the Lakers, Thunder, and Heat. So 7th in the West, but still probably a below average team. And we've talked about the Clippers before, and at least in our Western Conference preview, I think a lot of people, including us, were bullish on them because Ty Lue, he was able to get a lot out of like a misfit sort of group, and that when you get Paul George and Kawhi back, and you have a full season or a full off season rather for those deadline acquisitions last year for Norman Powell and Robert Covington, and then you
Hmm.
also add John Wall into this unit, who hasn't played in like 2.5 years. This team would be loaded with the depth, and then you have that top end talent, and
And it
we
all sounds good.
yeah, exactly. They check the boxes on paper. Again, on paper, the important phrase there, because I think we thought the top of the Western Conference would have some vulnerabilities, whether that was Phoenix with their chemistry issues or Golden State maybe having a championship hangover. But let's just rattle through this real quickly before we get your thoughts on it, Duncan. Out of 20 total games that they played, Kawhi Leonard, he has played 8. He started 6, plays around 25
Hmm.
minutes a game, 17% from 3,
Oh, I think that's
17.2%.
less than James Book night.
That it's hard, and it's he's not like shooting point 0.8 a game or something. Shooting 3.6 threes a game. I
Yikes.
don't know if he has his legs back under him, but he's been out for a while, so it's not like it's because he's playing 38 minutes a night every night. It's
Yeah.
like Kawhi's a part-time player at this point, and I think it's easy to be like, oh well, he'll eventually just get it back together. He'll go into the other gear, and he'll be the robot Terminator Kawhi that he was in Toronto. He'd have a rest game, and then he'd just turn it on and be that again. Well, that was 3 years ago, and it's tough to rely on Kawhi at this point. Paul George has played 20 of 28 games, and again, I think it's hard to rely on him beyond like 65 games at best. Luke Kennard and Robert Covington both played 17 out of 28 total games. They've got the depth, right? That's one of their strong suits. But if the top end isn't there, that severely lowers their ceiling as a unit, and especially if you're counting on some of the role guys, Kennard, Covington, to play a lot, and they played 17 of 28, just over half. It's hard for the floor to be there as well. And again, credit to them. They are 15 and 13, seventh in the West, firmly in the play-in race. But it just, if that top end isn't there, it's hard for me to see them being in that top tier of the West, which many thought they would be in.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just tough. I think they were better off knowing what they had. With the group of misfits, band of misfits, Ty Lue is a fantastic coach, and he's able to put a plan around that. But when your plan is to play the players that you have and the players that you have aren't playing, it all falls apart. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Uh, just being like in an NBA season is already so complicated, like all the game planning that all the teams are doing. And imagine each game having to vary that based off of who is and isn't available because you have five players or four players who are variable every night. Five players, yeah. Kawhi, Luke, Robert Covington, Paul George, and John Wall, who are all kind of variable. Like that's just a hard coaching job. It's a hard chemistry job, even though the players that are playing are quote unquote good. So it's tough to see them making a run. I see them losing in the play-in this season if it continues like this.
Again, it's just super hard to rely on the two players. They've only had two players play all 28 games. I would have to, I don't want to criticize them too much for that because, again, guys do miss one game every now and then. And so they do have guys that have played like 26, 27 out of possible 28 games, but only two have played all 28. Nicholas Batum and Ivaka Zubac. Zubac has been great. He has again one of the all-time fleeces from the Lakers that they got him for Mike Muscala. Um, but Zubac he had like a 30-29 game, 29 rebounds in a game.
Wow,
Just didn't
that
get
is
a
insane.
30-30, which would have been nuts.
They
I
would
think
have to make an ESPN 30 for 30 on that, right?
30 for 30 about a 30-30. It'd be a good
Yeah,
story.
it works.
But he has been one of the few bright spots. It's been a very frustrating team. Norman Powell had a really, really rough start to the season. He has started to turn it around. But I think he is like their second leading scorer after George. And the depth can only go so far. It is an older roster. And again, if they solve the injury bug, then this is a different conversation, but it's not the case.
Yeah.
And again, they only do have that final ceiling if Kawhi is back to his old form, and it's hard to count on that right now.
Yeah, and I mean his old form was years ago, and he has gotten what was it 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Well, 2019, he won the Finals MVP on the Raptors.
Yeah, so he's 3 years older, and when players get old, they're not as good, and maybe like I mean Kawhi is still a fantastic player, but it's hard to expect him to be in his prime after his prime was 3 years ago, and he's coming off of injuries. Like that's a tough gig for them over there in LA.
And that was even with John Wall having a great homecoming to DC last night. I believe the Clippers able to hold off the Wizards in that one. But yes, hard to rely on amidst the depth and all the injuries to the depth. I think somewhat similar to the next team we're going to talk about, the New York Knicks.
Yeah, so I don't think the Knicks are in Midtown, but they are definitely in Midtown. It's just the story of mediocrity. They're 15th in offensive rating, middle of the pack. 16th in defensive rating, middle of the pack. They're 13 and 13, eighth in the East. 500 over the last 10, 5 and 5. Like they're third in rebounds. Maybe that's how they're able to win with their poor shooting. 25th in field goal percentage at 45% and 27th in 3-point percentage at 32%. It's just like there's not a ton going for them. Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle haven't been bad. Brunson, 20 points per game, 6.5 assists, 3.3 rebounds. Mr. Randle at 22 points per game, almost 9 rebounds and 3.5 assists. But like they also haven't been good. Like I don't know. What do you think of this team, Peter? It's a weird situation in the East with the mediocrity that they're in and the mediocrity of the teams like above them and below them.
Well, the way that Tom Thibodeau loves to play in New York is he likes to play a deep rotation of guys. And I think that can be frustrating for fans because you see promising results out of a lot of young players or guys, and you think maybe they should get more of a shot in the rotation. But that just doesn't happen. So like Obi Toppin, his per 36 minutes stats have been very, very good, and he's been working on 3-point shooting, and the results have been okay. And so for Knicks fans, as Randall's numbers have come around, but they haven't always been there. So they're wondering if we're going to invest a top 10 pick, or maybe, or I believe it's a lottery pick for Toppin. Like we want this guy to get an opportunity. Same thing with Isaiah
Yeah,
Hartenstein, one of the steals and deals of the offseason, really. Maybe should have been featured on our episode 27 there. Hartenstein has been really, really good, but they went out and re-signed Mitchell Robinson on good money. So he's felt a need to play them both. And
yeah,
maybe the key to unlocking some of this stuff here for the Knicks is playing Toppin or Randall at the 5, and then the other at the 4, playing a little smaller. But again, they play so deep. So you have Derrick Rose and Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish sometimes plays. Uh,
maybe not for long.
they just have, maybe not for long. Maybe he'll get dealt. They just have so many guys, and he's insistent on playing all of them. And it's hard for anyone to get into a rhythm. And it, I
Yeah,
again, maybe they need more of an offensive coach, someone who could unlock RJ a little bit more, have a little more creativity in the lineups. Because again, it's like they're 16th in defensive rating. It's not the most talented roster, but if Tom Thibodeau's whole thing is defense, 16th in defensive rating, well, I like that
yeah.
number to be a little
It,
higher.
it's pretty mid. And I feel like the thing with spreading the minutes is something you do when you're the Spurs or the Hornets and you have, a lot of young talent and you kind of starting to give up on the season. But they're in the middle of it. They're eighth in the East. They're like, if they're not 5-5 over their next 10, they could go up like a couple of spots and maybe be in an actual playoffs seed. Like it's something has to change, or they're gonna just keep on being mediocre. But also to give them credit, like mediocrity is good to a certain extent, and they beat the Hawks in MSG when Trae Young was wearing the King of Broadway shoes. Like that's a culture win. Um, and maybe that's kind of what you're lacking in New York is a little bit of culture because it is a big market, but it doesn't feel like that. Like Brooklyn and the Knicks, they don't feel like big market teams. They don't attract free agents the way other teams do, even though they're in New York City, like a basketball city, if there ever was one.
No, they don't, and that was part of the, again, it depends on the way you viewed that Jalen Brunson signing. I thought it was a good signing because I think he's a real professional basketball player, and he is someone who I think raises the floor of this Knicks team. He buys into the culture. He understands the Knicks, and for that, again, he makes a lot of sense for the team. But if you thought that bringing Jalen Brunson was going to propel you to the top of the East, or maybe just as more in a more solid place, maybe avoiding the play-in,
Yeah,
and being that perennial all-star sort of player. Jalen Brunson isn't that, and he's not being paid like it as well. I mean, he's being paid around in the mid 20s in terms
yeah,
of point
24, I
guards,
believe.
right? In terms of point guard salaries, I mean that's around the Mike Conley, Lonzo Ball, D'Angelo Russell territory, and I think Brunson's been good, and you're willing to pay him that salary, but again, it's just part of the content. It's a part of the context in which you're viewing the signing. I think it's good for them, and I think it makes them more competent. But it is, you didn't bring in Jalen Brunson to. He's not going to fix you guys overnight. It's a good part building that culture, building that team, but you're not going to see instant results, and you haven't seen instant results.
Yeah. The one thing that is good and impressive about the Knicks, I mean, granted, it's early in the season, maybe we'll see a bit more of a return to the mean, but they are one of the few teams in the East with a winning road record. I believe it's the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Knicks, and that is it in the East. The people, like, if they, it's weird because you think, home court advantage, maybe if they can get the wins back up at home, but the Wizards are 3-10 on the road. Bulls 4-9. Heat 3-9. Raptors 3-10. Hawks 5-8. Pacers 4-6. Like they are in a position, if they keep on doing what they're doing, to slowly move up with their, another word for being mid, as I guess maybe is being consistent. They're consistent, winning some games, losing some games, not having a big effect home or away. I could see them like inching their way up, even though they're not like as a sexy as a team to talk about as like the Pacers with Halliburton. The Pacers are only one win ahead of the Knicks, and they're in sixth place, and they played one more game. So who knows? We could be spinning a whole nother narrative for the Knicks in a week.
I wonder what it is for that home away split. Do you think it's the Knicks fans are just like there's a lot of pressure to play there and sometimes it can be too much? Or is it other teams, they go into MSG and they see the bright lights and they turn it on for that game? Which do you think it is?
Um, I think it's the latter because it's all of the what comes with playing in MSG. Like it's a big deal for them, for all the players coming. So it's something we talk about in college basketball a lot too.
Mm.
It's just I guess it's a magical place to play basketball in. I can't say I haven't actually been to the arena, but have you been to MSG?
I went to one game. Yeah, I went to Knicks Sixers last year.
Oh, that's
And
right.
while I thought the building was underwhelming, they do put a lot into the entertainment experience and the presentation of it, and for that degree, it is kind of like you're seeing a show. Just the lighting,
Yeah.
something about it, more so than just going to watch a game.
Oh, I actually saw a super interesting tidbit about the way the celebrities get there. There's the six courtside seats at MSG, and there is a whole process for celebrities getting to sit there. Whether it be them doing ads for the Knicks and doing this or that, but the prestige that comes with those seats, like they're always full. It's people that have to agree to be on the jumbotron, which adds to the whole like magic of playing an MSG. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's why the other teams do well. They see like I don't know, like oh Pete Davidson is sitting right there. I want to be in his next comedy special. Like let me do something cool. Who knows?
I did see that. That was very interesting, and how it can be a part of free agency pitches and stuff like that. Super super interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a great marketing idea. Like, hey, we're not going to make any money off of these seats, but every once in a while we'll get like I don't know Alicia Keys to convince someone to come in. I don't know who's sitting in those seats the most often, um, but it's creative. I will give them that.
It is one thing the Knicks have got going for them. Something I think the other team in New York still is struggling to sort of figure out. They get celebrities, but again, the brand identity isn't fully there for the Brooklyn Nets, who some if you haven't been paying attention, I mean they've sort of crept up the standings and just sort of snuck on the rest of the league. They are 16 and 12, fourth in the East, 8 and 2 over their last 10. That is tied for the best record over the last 10, along with the Western Conference leading New Orleans Pelicans, and then the pair top the East of Boston and Milwaukee.
Wow,
Again, we can play the game of the wins and losses over the past 10 can be a little unimpressive. They've beaten the Raptors twice, though. Raptors twice is impressive.
that is
Blazers,
impressive.
and then you run the gauntlet of the Southeast Division: Magic, Wizards, Hornets, Hawks, and then you got the Pacers. The two losses over the last 10 are the Pacers and the Boston Celtics. And then their next six games are interesting. They have a road trip against Washington, Toronto, and Detroit, and then they have a stretch on national TV, home for Golden State and Milwaukee, and then at Cleveland. So some tough ones coming up again. We will see if they are able to sustain it and what kind of team they really are. But again, some promising things out of Brooklyn. They're ninth in the league in offensive rating,
Wow.
which I think you would expect. I mean, I'd definitely say they're more of an offensive team than a defensive team. But again, here's one of the more surprising aspects of their game: ninth in assist percentage. I would think just due to how prolific KD and Kyrie are as isolation scorers, they would have a lower number. But I think Ben has sort of started to figure it out, and the rotation is starting to figure itself out as well. They're starting to gel, play together as a unit. they've been able to shed that identity, and they're third in
Yeah,
true shooting percentage as well. They're just shooting the ball at an elite level.
yeah. I mean, I think we might have unlocked a new Kyrie, Apollo G Kyrie. I mean, in his last 10, 25, 4.5, 4.5 rebounds, and he's shooting 51% from the field and 38% from three. Like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, again, I mean, he has the best version of Kyrie is number two option on a team, and he's been able to do that well with how well Kevin has been playing. Kevin Durant, 36.8 minutes a game, so he's playing a lot. 30 points a game, 6.6
Wow.
rebounds, 5.4 assists, 1.7 blocks. So he is
Wow.
second on the team in assists to Ben Simmons. He leads the league in scoring, leads the team in scoring, sixth in the league behind Luka, Giannis, Shea, Steph, and Tatum. Again, we're at six guys scoring 30 a game. And he is
Wow.
second on the team in blocks to Claxton, and Claxton is fourth in the NBA in blocks behind Brook Lopez, Miles Turner, and Anthony Davis.
Wow. And I guess, yeah, the Ben Simmons effect too. Like, maybe him not being a liability, or as much of a liability, is helping. He's averaging 10, 7, and 6, or 5.5 for assists in his last 10 games. And things are coming together for them.
They again, things are coming together. It's hard to tell due to the schedule and stuff like that, but a lot of it has been buying into what Jacques Vaughn has been doing. They've gotten Seth Curry, Joe Harris healthy. We'll see if TJ Warren ever gets healthy. But there is one concerning thing for them that jumps out, and it fits the eye test too. If you're watching them, it is something you should be able to notice as well. They're 29th in the league in rebounding percentage, only ahead of the Dallas Mavericks. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, they've been a small team all season. That was sort of anticipated because outside of Claxton, their only center depth is Dayron Sharp, unless you want to put Ben Simmons or Kevin at that
Yeah.
small ball center. And this was something we talked about with the Mavericks. Actually, ironically, at the time, I don't think I had looked up and seen that the Mavericks were the worst in rebound percentage.
Wow.
Uh, but I, again, don't know if it works schematically. But I would again call up the Atlanta Hawks, see what the price is on Clint Capella. They have a lot of mid-range salaries they could do to match. Uh,
Yeah.
I presume it'd
It's a
be cheap.
rebounding machine. They're missing. It's like a better version of Andre Drummond, who they had last year. Like,
Hmm.
having that there, that could really be a game changer for the Nets.
And again, I think it would be cheaper than whatever the Pacers want for Miles Turner. Not to mention, this is something I think I knew when you see the number flash across the broadcast, but when you see it on paper, Nicholas Claxton, he struggled with his free throw shooting last playoffs. I think he had missed he set the record number for missed free throw attempts in a row in the playoffs. It was like 11 or 12, some crazy
That
number.
was that was so hard to watch.
But he is shooting 42.3%
Oof.
in free throw shooting. And at least based off ESPN, he wasn't qualified to be in the league leaders for free throw percentage, but it would be the worst in the league by far, presuming he would eventually qualify. The current leader in worst free throw percentage is Charlotte's own Mason Plumlee at
Yeah,
55.6%.
I think the funniest part about that is, so this season he's shooting with his left hand, and
Correct.
it's an improvement from last year. So he's the worst in the league, but it's better.
That's abysmal. It is almost Kawhi Leonard's 3-point percentage away from Claxton.
Yeah. Wow.
13.3% difference. That it's
Wow.
just awful. But I
You know, when
think
you're that far behind Mason Plumlee, you gotta just hit the gym, do a Shaq, get to 50%, right? How? I mean, I'm saying how hard that can that be? I'm not in the NBA. I have not made it to where Claxton is, but like, you got to be able to improve that at least.
you would think. Did you see the clip from Timberwolves Hornets the other night when Plumlee shot with his left hand and then they cut to Austin Rivers on the bench and his whole world was turned upside down. I've never seen a man so in disbelief just over like a free throw.
It looks so weird. It looks so clunky and bad, but at the same time, there's something kind of smooth about it. It's like watching like a new baby gazelle learning how to walk since he just started shooting like this, you know? So he's just doing the form. I wouldn't even say he's shooting. He's like following through. It's like he just learned how to like do, I don't know if you guys did beef, but balance, elbow, eyes, follow through, like just the basic form you learned in like 5th grade in an NBA game.
He's trying his best. And I think the reason why it worked is we've talked about this before. The muscle memory and the how many reps you do shooting one way, it is really, really hard to change the way you shoot. And it's always a big credit to NBA players who are able to make significant changes to their jumper and actually see results just because when you shoot so many times, it's hard to make those tweaks.
Yeah, and I mean, all these guys can shoot. Like in an open gym, they're gonna shoot like 90%. Um, and like Mason Plumlee, there's always a fun video of the off season of him like knocking down threes, which is also really weird to see with his left hand. He did
Mm.
that this off season. There's a video of him in the corner, left-handed, making threes. But yeah, it's credit to those players that relearn the jumpers.
And just to wrap up things on the Nets, I think they are more competent, and that's a good sign because it looked like hell was freezing over to start the season. I felt real
Yeah.
good about betting the under on the Nets. I felt real strong about that. But it's still hard to see them keeping up with the big players in the East with Boston, Philly, Milwaukee. And granted, I guess they've dealt with as much adversity as as a team can deal with, and they have limped through that to 8-2 again, best in the or tied for best in the league over the last 10. But can I see them holding up with Boston, Philly, Milwaukee? I I can't trust them right now for that. So top four in the East, very impressive. Like to see how they can even hang with Cleveland and maybe like a healthy Miami team. But
Yeah, I'd be super interested to see what they do because they have some shooters, and there are teams that do need shooters in the NBA. I don't know if you trade one of those guys, but it is interesting. It's kind of like what we say the Lakers need to do: of add shooters, add shooters, add shooters, and all of a sudden, like the Nets have shooters. You know, like they can dish it out to Joe Harris, Yuta Watanabe, or Seth Curry. Like those are three guys with very high 3-point percentages this season. And that is invaluable. And just adding the one more piece of maybe like a pure rebounder, like I mean they'd still have weaknesses, but it would be a much more solid team than we saw in the beginning of this season.
we'll see if they go out and get someone. Although I don't think they will be looking to trade any picks with how many they already had to offload in the James Harden deal. They did recoup some when they traded Harden, but
Yeah,
I do think they're staying away from that.
yeah.
So unless you have anything else about these LA and NY teams, Duncan, I think we will move on.
No, I think that's all I have. It would be interesting, or maybe one other thing, like Jay Crowder still has a needs a landing spot. I don't know if he's a rebounder, but I'd be interested to see him on the Nets.
Don't know if he fits in just because like they got a lot of wings. I mean, he would work. Jay Crowder fits in with almost any team in the NBA. I think he'd be really good on the Suns right now. Funnily enough, the irony, but he can
Imagine.
fit in almost anywhere. That's almost one of his biggest strong suits.
Yeah. But no, other than that, yeah, Nets are still in their own category from earlier this season. Excited to watch the rest of it.
Hard to figure out where they're going to be at. Oh, they could come cratering down, as we said. That 3 game stretch there on national TV going to be a tough one for them.
Oh yeah,
So now we will move on and look at the last week's Q&A and poll. Good news, everyone. It looks like I can finally see the polls again on the Spotify app. So for all of you that have
yay!
voted on the poll, I can read the results now. So last week's Q&A and poll last week was our MVP pit stop episode. so our Q&A was, is Steph a top 10 player all time? Duncan, you said that he's borderline, but he's not done yet. So he would be a solid top 10 at the end of his career.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make the argument that he is right now because he's not done. Um, he could win, I don't know, he could win 2 more championships and be like, yeah, what were we saying? Like he's top 10. So I think if he continues with his trajectory of greatness and doesn't slow down, there's a lot of people in top 10, but it would be hard to not include him in a game that's about shooting. I mean, that's not about shooting, but you shoot the basketball. He's the greatest shooter ever. Shooter ever. I think he's up there.
I mean, I think JJ has probably said this again. I'm just a JJ truther, but it is so hard to rank guys, and to like discriminate between like 7 and 8 or something like that. So I think it's much easier to put players into sort of tiers, into ranges, and
Yeah,
I think that is the way I would probably do a top 10, top 20 NBA players of all time. And he is firmly in that 8 to 15 range.
yeah,
Again, I'm not going to go through it, but it is hard to get through the top of of LeBron, Jordan, Kareem, Magic, Bird, Russell, Wilt. I mean, that's 7. That's hard to get
yeah.
past them. I think he's
He's
in
at
that
least a top 2 point guard.
top 2. Yep. Him and Magic, you would think probably the top 2.
That's what I'd argue. Yeah,
But it's hard to, him or versus Duncan, Shaq, Kobe, Hakeem, Oscar. Maybe that's disrespect to Oscar. Again, super hard, super difficult, impossible discussion, really. But again, it's so hard to vault past that top 7. Dude has 4 rings, though, which those speak
yeah.
for themselves. And then our poll, again, if you want to vote in the poll, it's still up, by the way. So if you want your voice to be heard, you can vote in the episode description on Spotify. If you click an episode, scroll to the bottom, you will see Q&A and poll. Link, as always, in the description of this and every episode. If you don't listen to us on Spotify, just go over there and vote. It takes 2 seconds. Easy, free. Again, free. So go ahead and do it. So the poll was, who's your pick for MVP? We gave 4 options: Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, as those were the 4 betting odds favorites, as well as the 4 we discussed in the episode. We also gave another option, but first place still was Jason Tatum as the pick for MVP. Do you feel any differently about maybe that, like, quote, consensus agreement after his tough performance last night?
Um, ah, it's hard to say. I think no, but if the same thing happens when he plays the Warriors again on January 20th, then maybe. I mean, it's all about narrative, and the MVP is like a season-long award, and so if he's able to like show up and have like a, not that it's necessarily about points, but like have like a 40-point game, say, and handily defeat a healthy Warriors team in January, then we're not talking about his 18-point game anymore. All recency bias. But another person that's come out recently that we didn't have on our list is the best player on the best team in the West, Zion. I wonder what his MVP odds are at right now
Mm.
because the man is on a mission.
He misses time, though. It's the only thing that's tough with the time he misses.
Yeah, I still think Tatum is more worthy than Zion as of right now, but I would still have him as the MVP if I were to vote today.
With what you were saying about the narrative, though, I mean, it's true. It exists, changes things so quickly, just how it works. Um, and after the Celtics really crushed Phoenix, not that, I mean, Tatum had like a fine game. He wasn't like stand out, but doing that signature game on national TV against
Hmm.
against the top team in the West, uh, it was a big statement win for the team, one that already was at the top of the league. And then to completely 180 the other way against the Warriors, it hurts. It
Yeah,
hurts, and certainly the way Tatum looked, he looked a little out of it, or flustered, or whatever you want to call it. But again, I still think he should be the betting odds favorite. And he was my pick. Number 2 is Luca in the poll, if you were wondering.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean the dude is just scoring so many points and putting up so many stats. It's Luka magic.
Yeah, we'll see if he proves to be the exception to the old sort of wins rule that is sort of in place for MVPs.
Yeah,
It'll depend if the Mavericks avoid the play-in or not.
yeah. And if not, then maybe he'll be a Nugget in a couple of years.
Luca on the him joining forces with Jokic.
Yeah, I saw an edit on Twitter, and it looks pretty natural.
My only thing though is I think they look way better in Mavs unis than in Nuggets unis.
True.
and
Although I think the Nuggets are in a better position to trade for Luca than the other way around.
I don't think any team is in a position to trade for Luca. I think you get Luca if he picks you. I don't think you can trade for that man.
That's fair.
You think Mark Cuban will give him up? He is his son. He will not do that.
That is true. How many more years is he stuck there? Well, not stuck, but under contract there.
I think probably I don't know if he has a player option. Probably like 2 or 3, because I presume he signed a max after his rookie contract was
Yeah,
up.
gotcha.
So a couple
Well, that'll
more
be
years.
interesting to see.
Yeah, everyone was the Sharks were circling when Giannis was maybe gonna be a free agent. And what they do, they went out, pushed the chips in for Drew, and then Giannis saw that they were making a commitment to him, so he decided to resign. What is that deal? What does it look like for the Mavericks? Who is the guy they're going to bring in to be the bona fide number 2? Granted, they already had Middleton. That helps them a lot.
Bronny James.
Don't think it is. I'll be honest.
That would be a weird LeBron and Luca. That'd be interesting.
That'd be that'd be weird. I don't know what to think of that. Well, hopefully the reality doesn't happen. But that is all we've got for now. Thank you for listening. As always, looks like we'll probably come back before Christmas. We'll do an episode previewing the Christmas games. Those are always so exciting. And then before the end of the year, we will do a best of 2022, a compilation episode of some of the best moments of the year. So be on the lookout for both of those in your inboxes. And we will see all of you next time.